Yeah, well, we really got a much bit clearer picture as to what prosecutors believe really contributed to the killing, and that's what they're saying was an intense gang war that was really permeating the West Coast hip hop at the time. And they're saying it was a conflict between the South Side Compton Crips that were led by Dwayne Davis and the Mob Piru gang, which was very closely associated with Death Row Records. Now, Tupac was one of the biggest stars of Death Row Records at the time, and the boss of the record label, Suge Knight, was actually in the BMW with Tupac the night he was shot in 1996. Now, prosecutors showed the jury today surveillance video of what they say was the immediate trigger of that attack. Surveillance video following a Mike Tyson fight at a prestigious Las Vegas hotel that night. Video of Tupac and Suge Knight attacking Orlando Anderson, that is the nephew of Dwayne Davis. And prosecutors allege that Dwayne Davis then spent the following few hours trying to retaliate and organize a retaliation against the two men. And we heard a remarkable detail from an eyewitness, from the first witness, one of the witnesses who was on the scene that night, a former Las Vegas police officer who said he rode in the ambulance with Tupac on the way to the hospital. He testified that Tupac was conscious on the way to the hospital. He asked him who shot him, but Tupac refused to cooperate and said, "We will take care of this." Now, prosecutors are now trying to connect all of this with Dwayne Davis's own words over the years. They played recordings of interviews that he recorded where he described his involvement in the shooting that night and how he provided the gun that was used to murder Tupac. They also showed excerpts of his 2019 memoir in which he describes a similar account. Now, his defense attorneys are saying those are simply the words of a man who was trying to make himself sound important and who was simply trying to sell more books. Dwayne Davis has since changed his perspective. He says he is innocent, was not involved in whatsoever in Tupac's murder, and that he was in Los Angeles that night of September 1996.
Now, Wassim, we are 3 decades on from the killing. Can you explain the delay in this trial?
Yeah, what's remarkable is that this case really went cold for many, many, many years. Investigators struggled to get witnesses to cooperate. We heard today in the opening statements that this was a very violent gang environment and that there was a lot of fear of retaliation. Police spoke to eyewitnesses. In one case, a witness who told police that night she was following Tupac's BMW in Las Vegas that night, but she didn't see anything because, quote, snitches get stitches. And also the reason why this case went cold for many, many years is that a lot of the people who were there on the scene that night are simply no longer alive. Orlando Anderson, the nephew of Dwayne Davis, who was attacked that night at that hotel and who was long considered to be the main suspect, the main gunman in that attack, was killed in an unrelated shooting in California 2 years later. And prosecutors say the 3 other men who were in that white Cadillac from which those shots were fired that night are also believed to be dead. And it's only because of these recent public statements by Dwayne Davis himself that the case has really started making some progress. As we've mentioned, he gave interviews and he published in 2019, he co-authored his memoir called Compton Street Legend, in which he describes his involvement in the shooting, and that essentially gave investigators evidence, details, leads to work with. But prosecutors are still hoping, even though they're not accusing Dwayne Davis of being the man who pulled the trigger, they are hoping to get answers as to what exactly happened that night almost 30 years ago. They are expected to call between 35 to 45 witnesses over the course of the next month.